Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so we're just gonna start off. You can just say your name and what year you graduated from Trinity.
Sure. My name is Magali. Roman is my maiden name. Salas, my married name. And I graduated in 1974.
Okay. What was your major when you graduated?
Urban Studies. That
Okay.
is an interdepartmental major. And at the time, it was political science, sociology, and economics.
Okay, that's cool.
But then I also had a minor in music
Hmm.
because I love to sing. And so voice and music was my minor. Yeah.
Okay. So we're just gonna start out basically just introducing yourself. So the first question would be when and where were you born and did you grow up there?
Yes, I was born in Puerto Rico in a small town, Gurabo, Puerto Rico. And yes, I was born and raised there. I went to Trinity. I came to live in the States for the first time ever, aside from visiting once in a while. But I came to live in the States when I was 17 and enrolled at Trinity for my freshman year in college. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
And then did your parents or guardians work outside of the home? And do you remember anything from like about the home that you were raised in?
Yeah, sure. It was a what you would call a normal home, mom and dad. They were married for about 62 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I have only one brother. He's younger than I am. He's 8 years younger. He still lives in Puerto Rico, has never resided here in the States, but he lives in Puerto Rico and, he married eventually and had two children of his own, my nephew and niece. And now he has grandchildren. And so growing up was both of my parents worked. My mom was in education, so she had several jobs. She started as an English teacher in Puerto Rico. Then she moved on to be a vocational counselor. Then she became a principal. All these, several years that she,
Mhm.
did all these jobs. And then she ended up as assistant superintendent of one of the big school districts in Puerto Rico. So she, went through the whole gamut of education um, jobs. My dad was not that educated. My dad had an eighth grade education, and he was what you would call now like an Uber driver. There in Puerto Rico, they don't have a good transportation system, public transportation system, like they have here, the buses, and then each county has like a little bus system. So there, what they had when I was growing up is there were a group of drivers who would drive from point A to point B, and all that was unionized. So no other driver could, come into that route. Only the group that was prescribed to that route, and that was belonged to one of those groups. And he loved people. He loved to drive, first of all. He was a very, very careful driver. I learned a lot from him, watching him drive. He never taught me how to drive. I had a different teacher that they hired, but he was a very careful driver. People loved get in his car to do their trips, the transportation. Um, and he just basically loved being with people and helping people. He was very public service oriented. So he did not want to do anything else. I mean, he just really enjoyed his job, and did that for many, many years until he retired. He was very supportive of my mother. This was a relationship that I'm not sure whether it would work today because he was not well educated, although he was he had great manners. He was a great conversationalist, but mom was the one with the education, and yet there was a lot of admiration for each other. You
Hmm.
know, mom admired all the skills that he had and all the dad could do carpentry, he could do plumbing, he could, be a car mechanic, whatever needed fixing in the house, dad could do. And mom, and so she admired that about him. And dad was so supportive of her education, and so he would promote her. Mom was not, she did not want to like doing that for herself. She thought that by doing a good job and being excellent, and my mom was extremely intelligent too, that by doing that, that you would get what you deserved. And you probably know that that's not the case, that in a way you have to toot your own horn, because otherwise, if you don't do that for yourself, sometimes people just don't notice or take you for granted. But dad was her great promoter, and he would always be looking for opportunities to make sure that mom was well known. And he would say things like, let's invite so and so over to the house for lunch, and you can, and mom would, roll her eyes, but she would go along. So they worked very well together, even though there was that difference. So I admire that a lot about them. And but they, then they had my brother. And by the time I left to come here, my brother was probably, let's see, he's 8 years younger, so he was like in elementary school still, I think. Yeah. And so they focused all the attention on him, and so I sort of missed out on that. I knew about my brother's milestones. He became an industrial engineer. I'm an attorney by profession. um, but I missed his growing up and, his milestones. And I heard, okay, he graduated with honors and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
right? So after a while, there was like a disconnect, and it stayed like that by me being here. And then I got married and got a job here, and then my life, had children. So my life was here and they were there. So what I noticed going backwards, looking backwards, is that, that's when the disconnect happened,
Mhm.
yeah. But growing up, yeah, my parents, both of them emphasized education. That was very important for them. And even with me wanting to be in the arts, they were not supportive of that. That was okay as a hobby, and I could sing at family gatherings, and at church. But I had to be for my father. His children should be looking at being doctors, engineers, attorneys, and teachers, because mom was a teacher, you know?
Mhm.
And that's what. So guess what? I became a lawyer, and my brother is an engineer. So, and I'm a frustrated opera singer. So, you know, but it was so good. I don't, family's family. There was nothing terrible going on or weird. It was
Mhm.
actually, they had a good model to imitate. And like I say, I don't think that it would work today. I mean, today there's just a lot more emphasis on what you have and what you have not,
Mhm.
and having common topics of conversation. I'm sure that they had those issues, but I never saw them.
And what did you want to be when you grew up?
I already told you. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a singer and an actress. That's what I really wanted to do.
Mhm.
But I ended up being a lawyer. And I don't regret that at all. It allowed me to live a comfortable life. I'm not, I don't consider myself to be materialistic. Like, I don't, my car is 20 years old. My home is not a mansion.
Mhm.
Um, but being an attorney allowed me, gave me freedom, choices. And I worked all of my career was in the federal government. So that was public service. And I enjoyed that. I liked that because I could get into issues that affected a big number of people, like communications or energy supply. But I could also have a family. I did not have to be rainmaking at an office until 8 or 9 in the evening because I had to, get clients or do an additional memo to bill hours. So there's pros and cons. I don't fault people who do that. That's wonderful. It works for many people. But for me, I just did not see myself as going to that kind of life. So I don't regret. I have no regrets. I worked for the government, have a very nice pension now. So no, I don't regret it at all. But if you ask me what I really wanted to be,
Mhm.
I wanted to be a singer and actress. Yes.
So what brought you to Trinity, and was Trinity your first option for college?
Um, Pretty much. What brought me is that I was already admitted to college at the Puerto Rico University, University of Puerto Rico, which is like the state university. And I was already admitted there, but I had a very good friend. We were in the school newspaper together, and he wanted to be a vet. And there were no vet schools in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico had at the time, they had, and I still think that it's the same now. They had a wonderful medical school, the university, but no veterinary medicine. And some states are like that too. You have to go to another state to specialize in veterinary medicine. So my friend Jose and we used to, while we fiddle around with the newspaper often, think about what we wanted to do. And he already had decided that, but he could not stay in Puerto Rico if he was going to do that. And so he had to apply. And then he started asking me, why aren't you applying? Don't you want to get out of here?
Mhm.
Don't you want to see other places? And I'm like, no, I'm comfortable. I have a nice family and I like the island. All my family's here. Like, what is there to look for? And of course, he had a broader perspective. His perspective was more, I'd say, it was better, for a young person, it's better, I think now, looking back, to have that wider perspective, to understand that the more you get to know about the world, the better person you become, the more compassionate you become. And so because he challenged me. He said, why don't you just apply? And, who knows, you may get in and you may get a good financial package. Because my parents really, they didn't, they were okay, but they had no money, to finance like an Ivy League school. That was just not going to happen. And so he persuaded me, and I said, "Oh, what the heck, And I had good scores. I had good SAT scores, so that was not going to be an issue. And I had excellent grades, and so I figured, okay, I have a chance. The only issue would have been the finances, because I had no family here. It's not like I could stay with somebody and save my parents' money. And so I applied to Trinity because in my school, I went to a Catholic school, co-ed school. But in my school, there were two young women who, at the time, Trinity was totally co-ed, totally. I mean, totally all women's. And there were two women who had applied to Trinity, and they, even though they had come back after 2 years, they still liked the experience. It's just that it wasn't for them because they missed family a lot. But they, as far as the education, they really had all kinds of good things to say about Trinity. And so I said, okay, well, that's worth a lot to me, and so I applied to Trinity. And then I also applied to Columbia University and to where else? Columbia and Georgetown, right? I wasn't interested in going to California or to the South, or I wasn't interested in being too far away from politics. I really enjoyed the politics. I always did. Growing up with my family tended to be very political in Puerto Rico. Um, Politics is a hot topic, and it's always there all the time, every year. And so I grew up like that, and the notion of being in a place where the president was down the street was like so attractive to me, and the opportunities to get to know more about the arts and the capital where laws were made. I'm just, I would, because I already was thinking about law. Maybe I would go to law school. So Washington, the area was just very attractive, just being here. And then Trinity came back with, I got accepted into Columbia, and I can't remember. I think I got accepted into Georgetown, but they were not offering me that much money. But
Mhm.
Trinity came back with a very good financial package. And with some savings that my parents had, it was a possibility. It was a real possibility. And the issue became whether I wanted to leave. And that was hard because I had a real choice. I already had been accepted there, and all my friends were staying. They studied there. Um, so I left. I also, on a personal level, I was going through a heartbreak. And so I said, well, maybe, I don't know, stupidly I thought if I leave, maybe he'll realize, that, it did not happen. But that also was a factor. But the fact that it was Washington, and the fact that um, I had a good financial package, and so it would not be a burden on my parents, I made the decision. And my good friend Jose, who was also taking that leap, you know. And so I felt comfortable with my decision. Yeah. Hmm.
And how would you describe your experience at Trinity once you went there?
Oh, it was eye opening. The first thing, honestly, that I noticed was the race issue.
Mm.
We were talking 1974,
Mm.
right? And Trinity was very different from the Trinity of today. Trinity was still basically all white, um, upper middle class, and well-to-do class. That was a population. You had like the um, women who would inherit the Pepperidge Farm, dynasty. A cousin to Connie Stevens was there, the singer. They were nice women. It's just that they were well-to-do. They were wealthy. Um, and of course, I did not come from that family, but that really was not the issue, because these women were there because they were different. They wanted to leave that kind of heritage behind, and just be with everybody. They were not stuck up. But what was different is that where I was raised, in Puerto Rico. I honestly, I don't know if you'll believe me when I say this to you. And if it's not true, it's in the back of my conscience, where I cannot get in touch with that. But I really, really did not focus ever on the color of anybody else's skin. It just was not an issue, because in the Caribbean, we're either very pale, or caramel color, or dark, but that just was not an issue. And
Mm.
sitting next to somebody who was from a different race and their hair was different, No, we did not talk about those things. Now, was there racism? Yes, but not so flagrant, you know. Racism came into play when, for example, if I had told my father that I wanted to marry a black Puerto Rican, he
Mhm.
would say, let's talk about this. Because I'm going to be honest. Yeah, those things would happen. But if the family itself, had black members just because, then it was not an issue. Um, so when I came here, there was a group of about six Puerto Rican girls coming from different towns or cities in Puerto Rico. And I was the only one like from the country type thing. Uh, a lot of them, like three of them, were from the capital, and so they had different experiences, right? But we all got along, and nobody was standoffish, in our group. But we noticed that the black girls really did not want to mix with anybody else, you know, and they would be sitting in a group, and there were numerous, in the cafeteria. They would sit all together, and it was sort of like scary to try to break in that group, you know. I remember in my hallway, I don't know, are you familiar with O'Connor Hall in the
Mhm.
main building? I lived in O'Connor for 3 years. And so those were at the time single rooms. And we had, all of us were friends. And but there was two black girls there also who had rooms there. One of them, I remember her name now. It doesn't matter, but I can see it. And she would be like, um we would meet in the hallway if we were like coming back from class or she was leaving, and it was like one of these, like, and that was just so weird to me. I of course I felt bad.
Mhm.
But I did not think that there was anything wrong with me. I said, what's up with this? Why is there such division? And then little by little, I started learning, to my sadness, um, well, that maybe blacks and Hispanics don't mix very well. Um, and it was sad. But I learned about racism. I started to learn there, and how to deal with that. And basically, see, we Puerto Ricans, first of all, not all Latinos are the same. People here tend to group us all together, but that's a mistake. That's not being sensitive to each Hispanic speaking country. Puerto Ricans, we tend to be very hospitable, very friendly, very loving, and we try to go out of our way to make friends, right? Well, eventually I learned about people's spaces, you know, that people have their own space, and that people have boundaries, and they show you, depending on the interaction, how close in they are, the boundaries, and how wide apart. And so I learned, to leave them alone,
Mhm.
basically, that nothing was going to happen there. I just leave them alone. Don't try. Um, and so, yeah, that was not a good experience. But as far as the education, it was excellent. The teachers, I remember, especially the English teachers. My English was proficient, but I had learned conversational English. I had learned like a more formal type of, or I learned the formal one and not quite the slang. And I remember going to the orientation session, and the last question on a questionnaire that they gave all freshmen was filling out this questionnaire a drag. And I went like, a
Mhm.
drag? I don't know what a drag is. What am I gonna do here? I didn't know some words. And by intuition, I figured out that it was something like, did I enjoy it or not? And so I didn't mind it. So I Well, no, it wasn't. So it was that type of thing, little by little adapting to the culture and to differences that I saw. But as far as the education, it was just excellent. The English teachers, especially, and they did it with everybody, native speakers or not. Um, they were so picky on correcting everything and the papers, but it was wonderful, because it was a great foundation. The one-to-one interaction with teachers. If
Mhm.
they saw you struggling, they in many colleges, okay, you are the one who need help, right? But they would come to you, are you okay? Is everything okay? Even personal. Are you missing home? Are you, with everybody? Because all of us, the commuting population was very small. We call them commuters. Now we don't do that. Eventually we changed to day students, and they were commuters. Maybe just a group of a small number of people. Most of us stayed there. And so the teachers, a lot of them were nuns who resided there, but even the ones who came in were very caring. They were interested in developing all aspects of a woman. That has always been the trademark, to make sure that they put out there women who could stand on their own, who were had defined opinions about world issues and community issues. That has always been the trademark, and to be of service. So we all experience that. And so overall, it's a great experience for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And since you are Latina, did you experience like any challenges being a woman of color?
In which way?
Like when you were in Trinity, like it could be in the classroom or like in our or like with other students that you've encountered. Did you experience any challenges being Latina?
Well, aside from the social relationships with the Black students, no, no, because in the classroom setting, we all felt valued, respected. There were no challenges. The only challenge was, you know, to get a good grade in statistics. I wish I did. Just like regular things. But no other challenges. Pretty much it was everything that I wanted to do was supported. Like I spent a lot of time in the music department, even though I had all this work that I wanted and needed to do for my other classes. But they supported me on that, and I was able to I did voice recitals, because I took voice lessons, did voice recitals, I did little operas that they put on. And technically speaking, that was not my department. That was different. There's no music department now, right?
I
Yeah.
think I think there is. It's just small.
They started it because last time I checked, there was
Oh
no
yeah,
music.
they started it. Yeah, I think it's by kind of I don't know where it is, but I've heard them play the piano before, and it's like they have one separate wing where they have the music
Well, that's
department.
good. But I'm pretty sure that that's new, because after there was no music department for many years,
Mhm.
because I checked, and my daughter went to Trinity, you know. Um, but and in my time, it was one of the big departments, because
Mhm.
it was more like a liberal arts college, and it catered to music, art. The art department was also excellent. Um, and so I was able to participate in that, and I never felt discriminated against because I was not from the department or because I was Puerto Rican. Just the opposite. A lot of people were interested in curious about my culture and the kind of food that we ate, and yeah, yeah.
And how welcoming was Trinity to gay students when you attended?
Mm, that is interesting. Did I know gay students? I mean, in my time, people were not coming out.
Hmm.
Okay. 1974. Um, and in a Catholic all women's college, um, the Catholic Church, I'm a Catholic, but I know the Catholic Church has been late in evolving towards opening its doors to um, gays, right? And still, what we say, is as long as you don't act on it, you can be gay. Just don't act on it, right? But in my time, people were not coming out of that like that. So it was not talked about. We we probably noticed that there were okay. So in my immediate circle, there was none of us were gay. So it
Mhm.
was just not a topic. We did not talk about it. We were busy. We had a lot to do. And so and we were busy being girls. I mean, there was nothing wrong with that. We would save our money
Mhm.
to maybe once every 2 months, go out and splurge on a wonderful dinner downtown, at a restaurant. Um, no, the issue of gays, that just did not come up. Now, there may have been other circles in which, the issue came up because one of the friends was gay and it was well known among them. But that was not my experience, you know, no. It was not an issue. Nobody proposed to me, or I did not see it. It's like, you
Okay.
know.
So then we're gonna go to like if you had any role models. So did you have any mentor or role model at Trinity at your time there?
um, um, hmm. Yes, Mrs. Lynch. Mrs. Lynch was um, she was Italian by birth, but
Mhm.
she was my one of my English teachers, and she was fantastic. And she basically like adopted me. Maybe the Latin connection by her being Italian, and I'm Latina. We felt very connected, and she um, looked after me. Like she told me about Phi Beta Kappa and that, I had an opportunity to get in and why that was important and good to have on your resume, on your record.
Mhm.
And um, she told me how to write like, you know, letters to apply for jobs, my resume. And so she definitely was a mentor. And my other mentor was my voice teacher, Dr. Sharon Schaefer. And she was there, well, she left at least 10 years ago, but she stayed there as chair of the department long after I left. She nurtured that other side. Yeah. So definitely. Yeah, definitely. Mhm.
And how do you think she contributed to your academic and personal growth?
You mean towards me being a lawyer, for example, or I mean, okay, well, both of them did in the sense of law school is rough, is very hard, and we were taught to, or the sense of working hard towards something that you wanted, that was fostered within me because I could see their interest, their genuine interest, and that made me work hard at what I wanted because number one, I did not want to disappoint them. It was like having mom there. It was like having an adoptive, mother. You had something, I had somebody who believed in me. And so, yeah, of course. And you have somebody saying you can do this, then, your mental mindset, your mindset is so important in anything you do. And I can see that now. Back then, I did not could not frame it in those terms, but they were obviously influential because they gave me the confidence to push forward and to say, yeah, I can be a lawyer. I can really do this if I want to. Yeah. It's believing in me, certainly. Yeah.
And then what is the most memorable piece um, of advice that your mentor, someone else at Trinity, has given you?
That I'm sorry. Say that again.
What is the most memorable piece of advice that your mentor or someone else at Trinity has given you?
I can't remember any phrase in particular, any type of advice.
Mhm.
Um, but what I do remember is interactions, that they were consistent, that they happened, every week, that is this sense of saying, believe in yourself, just believe in yourself and work hard. The work ethic, I think, was probably the most important thing that I gained at Trinity. Um, that you just don't, get by. And
Mhm.
getting by was just not enough if I was not making use of my full potential. So that carried me through in law school because when I went from Trinity to law school, I went to Georgetown Law, and that was like night and day because oops, because Georgetown Law is huge, huge. I mean, at Trinity, I don't know how many students you have now per class. In my time, there were no more than 20 at a time, and that was like the courses that were, you know, more popular or that you needed to take. In law school, the first year class was about 400 students.
Um,
Every session that I took, every class I took, there were probably more than 100 students there, and it was scary. It was just very scary, you know. It was very hard for me in law school. Some people breeze through it. They have this temperament and this way of viewing things that they just breeze through it. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. Clearly, when you get admitted, you have shown that you have the potential, to make it, right? But it's a way of writing. For example, Trinity was creative writing because that's what they teach you in liberal arts, and writing in law school is very scientific oriented. So I had to learn the difference. But going from Trinity to there, when I was there and having a hard time, it when I reflected on my successes at Trinity, I would get all pumped up and say to myself, I can do this. So it worked. Yeah.
mhm. And can you tell me about one or two historical moments that occurred while you were at Trinity, that moved you emotionally?
Um, I think that in 1973, 74, well, Nixon resigned in 74, right? I'm pretty sure that was the President Nixon. So in 1973, the Watergate era happened during my time. And yeah, that was very emotional to watch the country go through that. Um, that's the one that I remember, I remember that everybody was talking about it, and how could this happen? Was this necessary? When there was a burglary, and he actually, but for his paranoia and narcissism, he had no reason to do this. He probably was going to win the elections,
Mhm.
um, but he was not well. And so he was paranoid about people speaking behind his back or thinking that he was going to lose. and so cause all of this trauma to happen. And so that was very emotional. Um, yeah.
And how did those moments impact your life and your career if it did?
Well, sure, they had an impact because they affect they affected my sense of stability. You
Mhm.
know, you're moving right along and everything is like the same every other day, and then all of a sudden I mean, I saw that foundations of government can be shaken, um, and made me pay more attention to current events and what was going on. Made me a more responsible citizen. Um, um, Urged me to stay more informed. And normally, I mean, at least for me, when I was in college, I was very responsible, a very responsible student. But I also, did not care too much about what was going on. I just wanted to get good grades and make sure that I was doing everything right. Um, but was a little bit disconnected with what was going on around me, you know? And when an experience like that happened, it made me realize I'm not here just in a vacuum. I mean, there's just like important stuff happening around me. And that was just too close to home. And probably because I was in Washington, D.C., and we got more, the saturation was higher, the level of saturation about all the reports and the impacts and all the news commentary. I felt the impact more, but certainly made me notice more, gave me more awareness of, say, how things can change in a second, in a moment, your whole world, can change. Um, and so, fast forwarding to today, when I see the political landscape coming up, some of it is quite scary, it's quite scary. I don't think that we have good choices right now, and so I go back and then I say, oh, that was nothing compared to what we're living today. Things can go really south, really fast.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what did you do after receiving your undergraduate degree from Trinity?
After that, I went straight to law school. I did not do a gap year. I could have, but I was concerned that once I started working, I would move away from that goal. And I did not think that I could handle, maybe I would have been able to, but I did not think that I could handle work and going to law school at the same time. So if it was feasible, I just wanted to finish. And again, I got financial aid, I got some loans, and I was able to go straight through. And I did that. I wanted to do that. Yeah. Mhm.
And what professional accomplishments are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of the fact that when I retired from federal government,
Mhm.
I retired as a member of the Senior Executive Service. That is an elite group of public servants, top level managers. And when I retired, I was one in like 3% of government workers. And for a Latina, for a female Latina, that's a big accomplishment, not only a personal accomplishment, but also it opens doors for everybody else who's coming behind me because, they see what I look like. And then this persona tells future employers this is possible, somebody who looks like her can be a great worker too, they don't have doubts. And so I'm very proud of that accomplishment. I worked really hard for it. There's a lot of things that are said about government workers. I never, there may have been one or two okay people that I can remember were not pulling their weight, But for the most part, I met hardworking people, who did their job every day. The only difference is that their job, it was 8 hours and they had half hour for lunch and they took it and that was fine. But everybody did what they had to do. And eventually, what happens with attorneys in government is that when bosses want to retain you, there's only so much legal work they can give you. So then they offer you a management position. And then,
Mhm.
of course, I wanted, everybody wants more money, and a promotion. So if you want a promotion, then as a lawyer, you become a manager. And so that's how I got into the management track. But it's never, it's not that I stopped being a lawyer, it's just that I managed a group of lawyers and sometimes non-lawyers. And and to be in the senior executive service is a big deal. It's a big deal. Not everybody can make it. It's rough, you have to answer all kinds of questions and have experience. Nobody can do that. Nobody can achieve that with 3 years of government service. It's something that if you don't have experience to document, why you would be good at that. Because the idea is that there's a group of top level managers that because of their management experience, you can send them anywhere in government. They don't have to stay at the agency where they have practice, right? So if I was at the Federal Communications Commission, which I was, in theory, they could have sent me to the Department of Education as a top level manager because what you're focusing on is the management experience of that person. So that was a big accomplishment. And I ended up at the FCC. I was the secretary of the commission. That was, in itself a big milestone. And then I moved over to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and also as the secretary of the commission. And so it was quite exciting, people who had made filings at the FCC, all of a sudden they saw the same name at the other place, and we're like, wait a minute, no, you know? So it was a great career. I really have no complaints. No complaints. Yeah.
And what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind?
For whom?
For you, for, you know, well, God forbid, once you are not
Yeah.
here anymore, what would you like for people to remember you?
I would like people from my professional legacy, I would want people to remember um that I worked hard and that I was always fair, or at least try to be. And because not everybody's going to like your decisions, especially if you're a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Like it comes with the territory. But I think that if you are perceived as a fair person, as like you are doing the best you can on difficult circumstances, as long as you can explain your actions, and be truthful, and people may not agree with you, and you may be wrong. I mean, I made some blunders. um what I did when I made blunders is I came out clean, to my staff, and I said, that was not a shining moment, and thank you for pointing that out, and this is how I am going to repair that damage. I like them to remember that I tried my best all the time, and that I tried to be fair. But it was not a free for all. Everybody knew who the boss was because they paid you to make those decisions, right? But I think that if people in every interaction, if they could bring that to bear, doing your best, working hard. If you ask somebody to do something, it's because you yourself can do it, and or you would do it too. Um, so within the professional setting, I would want to be remembered as such. Within my personal setting, I would like to be remembered as pretty much the same way, that I try to be loving, that I try to help in any aspect, as I wanted, basically that I wanted to be of service, to my family members too.
Mhm.
Um, that I, hopefully they would think that I wasn't selfish. I mean, I try not to be, but yeah, it doesn't matter to me that they may look at me and say, "Oh, why don't you have like a big mansion and a Mercedes Benz, in the driveway, and you're a lawyer, and what that's not important to me. Is how they remember me as a person, as a member of the family. You know.
And what does the world need to know about Trinity? And what does the world need to know about Trinity alumni?
Oh, about Trinity, that Trinity has, um, I don't want to use the word struggled. Trinity's commitment to what I mentioned before, to the full development of womanhood on a personal level, um, on the educational level, and as a citizen. And the commitment is so extraordinary, because in other colleges and universities, of course, you have other milestones and other goals, but that is goal number one of Trinity. And it is a wonderful place for women in particular. And it is important that women are able to express themselves in a safe environment, so you can start learning how to raise your own voice, because sometimes you don't even know what your voice is, right? And in the meantime, you're receiving a great education and you're figuring out, how am I going to make a mark among my family members and in my community. So I think that there will always be a place for an institution like Trinity, a university like Trinity. It's so important. And the president now is a classmate of mine, Pat McGuire.
Mhm.
She graduated also in 1974. And the wonderful thing that she has done is that she has made Trinity relevant to the community. Remember how I told you that it used to be known as a high class, college for women, excellent in many ways, but that needed to change if Trinity was going to survive as an institution that cared for the education of womanhood as a whole. And Pat has navigated that in an extraordinary way by partnering with the community and showing how the community in DC needs Trinity, and Trinity, needs a community. So the population is different now. Is more diverse. There's people with different types of economic needs, and all of that is wonderful and it's working. Look at you. You're working on this wonderful project, and you're an example too of what Trinity can do. Yeah. And so that's about Trinity. And then about what else you said about
About what do you want the world to, well, what do you want the world to know about Trinity alumni?
Trinity alumni, um, that we feel privileged, and we will always feel privileged for having had the opportunity to attend Trinity and to be educated at Trinity. It is definitely a sisterhood. I'm not telling you that, we're all connected nationwide, people have their circles,
Mhm.
but I have friends right now, for example, in my church choir. I'm not doing that right now, but for about before the pandemic, for about 10 years, I sang with Marcy. And Marcy and I used to sing together in the Glee Club at Trinity, and just this bond to be able to sing together again and to help each other. If Marcy did not have copies of music, but I would not go there like, well, that's your problem. I would help her. Secondly, because she was a colleague in the choir, but first of all, because she was a Trinity sister, and we're there for each other. Just recently on March 19th, Suma Degoski, who was Trinity alumna, older than I am. I think she was like 80 when she died. I'm not sure. But she died last just like weeks ago. And we I mean, there were some of us who went there because of that bond. She used to go to my church, but we went there to the memorial service because of the Trinity bond. I mean, there's you're like a Trinity woman forever, and if you're in a workplace and all of a sudden you realize, you say, you went to Trinity, I went to Trinity, something happens. And I think what happens is the it's a sense of gratitude that that life afforded you this opportunity to get this wonderful education. Yeah.
And what piece of advice would you give to current and future Trinity students? And what do you hope for them moving forward to preserve the university's legacy?
Well, I would hope that they realize the great opportunity that they're having at the time, and that they become ambassadors, for that. Um, Not all of you are going to have a big podium, where you can proclaim this, but you can proclaim it in the community. For example, I never told my daughter that I wanted her to go to Trinity, but when Trinity opened the athletic facilities, because she was an athlete and she was going through high school, I said, hey, Trinity opened this wonderful facility. Let's go and check it out. And she was interested. And that was like her first taste
Mhm.
of the atmosphere, and the commitment to a full education for women. And that was my way of asking her to consider it. And I figured, well, if I tell her that I would like her to go to Trinity, she probably is going to say no, you know. But it did not happen. I think that we can be ambassadors. We can try to find ways to be ambassadors. Doing this project is also another way to be an ambassador, because um, you somebody like you finds connections on the outside, and hopefully you realize what your life can be like eventually, because of the opportunity that you have. So I think that staying in touch, certainly supporting, if you can financially, the programs, the initiatives, and Pat has had many. um, and so that's another way, yeah. But staying involved is what I would say. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay. All right.
That was all the questions for today.
Okay.
Yes, we're done with the interview. I just want to say thank you for participating and giving me a chance to talk to you and knowing more about my school's history.
Yeah. Well, you're in a great place. So, what year are you,
I'm a
Georgia? You're a junior? Okay, awesome. That's awesome.